In March 2021, in the midst of a nationwide lockdown, the UK was sent into shock with one of the most chilling and heartbreaking crimes that we have seen in recent times. A crime that was carried out upon an innocent member of society and carried out by a member of society that we are led to trust the most. The details of this case show police incompetence, the lengths that individuals will go to in order to carry out their evil desires, and it inspired a movement that the UK hadn't seen similar to in over 40 years. This is a story of both trust and betrayal. This is a story of the safety of society in the current day, but most importantly, this is the story of Sarah Everard.
So as I'm sure you'll know if you've clicked on this video, this case is incredibly disturbing and it involves the police and their incompetence, but it also involves the story of an innocent lady, as Joey just said, in Sarah Everard. So now we're going to discuss this case in as much detail as we possibly can, but obviously what we're going to try and do is tackle it as sensitively as possible.
Yeah, I think one thing that we've always tried to make very, very clear and very apparent on this podcast is, although we're covering the topic of true crime, we are not criminologists, we are not forensic experts, we're not lawyers, we're not solicitors, we're not anything like that, and we definitely do not claim to be experts. But to hold an interest in something and an intrigue in something, you don't need to be an expert. And when we describe the podcasts, and obviously because it is a very sensitive nature of topic that we speak about, we always try and make sure we emphasize that this podcast is designed to be the experience of the viewer being a fly on the wall, and we are just two blokes sat in a pub who share a mutual interest in true crime cases, and we discuss them over a couple of drinks.
Exactly. And remember, like a lot of people have asked us to cover this case, so we hope that we will cover it with justice and the sensitivity as we've just described. But let me first tell you a little bit more about who Sarah Everard was. Sarah was born in 1987 in Surrey, England, and she was the youngest of 3 siblings. She had a sister named Katie and a brother named James. Now, Sarah was incredibly intelligent and she shone at school, and she actually got into one of the best unis in the country in Durham. She graduated from Durham in 2008, and upon graduating, she moved to London to start a career in marketing. In February 2021, Sarah landed what she described as her dream job as a marketing exec at Flipside Group, a digital marketing agency in Holborn, London. Sarah had a loving partner called Josh, who was the same age as her and also worked in marketing. They lived just a couple of streets away from each other in Brixton, and friends described them as having a deep love for one another at the time when Sarah went missing. And rather tragically, they were planning a holiday to Ibiza together and had actually even discussed moving in together. Sarah's parents described her as caring, funny, and clever, and that she brought so much joy to their lives. Where we first see Sarah in this case is on March the 3rd, 2021. So on that night, Sarah had been visiting one of her friends, and they were visiting her in Clapham Junction. So it's not too far away from Brixton where she lived. Now, she actually left the friend's house at about 9 o'clock. Now, the context that we have to discuss in this case is that this is 2021. We're in the middle of a national lockdown, and people weren't actually able to go and see friends as often as we do now. If this had happened now, she would have got on a bus, she would have got on a bike, she would have done something else, right? She would have got on public transport.
Can I ask you, though, like, why did she walk home? Because obviously I have done a bit of studying on this case, and obviously because this hit global headlines, you've got a lot of like Americans and stuff that had covered this case, and they're saying, you know, she's walking through London, but it's not a rough area of London and whatnot. And I'm thinking, yeah, borough wise, it's not like the worst borough, but like Clapham at night, still you can still see some. You
can, but I mean, when was the last time you went to Clapham? It's very gentrified now.
Maybe, yeah.
Like to be honest with you, like I've heard a lot of people also sort of bad mouthing Brixton as well. Like obviously the context of this is I live in and around this area. Like it's not very far from where I am. And I would say, to be honest with you, it's very much gentrified, and also like it's not as dangerous as it once was. Not to say there isn't any crime there.
You are so right now. Like Brixton would have a heart attack. If Brixton of 05 would have a heart attack if it could see Brixton of 2025.
Mate, there's
Brixton of 05, you might not get out alive.
Mate, there's flats in Brixton now that are going for like a 1-bed flat would go for like 700 grand.
Okay.
More than that.
Okay. So what we're establishing is it wasn't the roughest area. It wasn't, I don't know, Harlesden. It wasn't, I don't know what the crime rates are per area, right? So it wasn't the roughest. But at the same time, I would say it was still a rough area to be walking through at night on what approximately was about, I believe, a 49-minute walk.
Yeah, but it's 2.5 miles. When you put it into that context, that doesn't feel like a very long walk to me, does it? This is the ultimate context, right? If you are a young woman in her 30s that can't do a 2.5 mile walk through London through getting scared, there's a bigger societal issue to be had.
But we know, no, Josh, you're getting it completely wrong though. We know there is a bigger societal issue to be had. But remember, this isn't a loaded question. I'm not trying to look you up, make you out to look bad. That's not your problem. That's society's problem, which means it's all of our problem. But, right, regardless of age, I bang on about my daughter all the time, yeah?
Yeah.
Forget 3 years old, 33 years old. You are a 60-year-old, old Claudia Lawrence's dad, you know? Spoke about what a lovely man he was. Would you even want your 33-year-old walking best part of an hour, 9:30 at night home
in the dark
after a few drinks? Would you?
I mean, I would want to live in a world where that was fine. But the fact of the matter is, I agree with you. We don't live in a world like that. But I'm sure there are so many women right now that will do that walk and will not even think about it. But I'm sure there's also plenty of viewers and plenty of women that have to consistently think about those issues as well. Sarah was a smart woman, and so she did steps that young women have to do to protect themselves when walking through London, right? At 9:15, so bear in mind she left at 9 o'clock, she calls her boyfriend Josh on the phone. For 15 minutes of that 50-minute walk, she was speaking to him. And again, you know, we don't have to deal with this problem, but I know a lot of women that when they go on that walk, they'll call a friend or a loved one to be able to feel a little bit safer, so that if anything happens, they would have, they would be able to sort of, help them straight away.
I like the way you say women, like you've never done it when you've been walking through the park calling me.
Mate, honestly, some of those dark nights, you've saved my life.
There
you really
go.
have.
There you go.
And mainly just for the conversation.
Yeah, there you go.
So in terms of what they had said on that call, this is very important. They had agreed to meet the following day.
And just quickly, no distress signals on the call. Nothing for her boyfriend Josh to have any indication that anything untoward had happened.
No, they left that call and it was a very normal conversation. And bear in mind, again, we're going back to the walk very quickly. It's a walk that she'd done many times.
Yeah,
it's something. This is a routine. This is a friend that she'd seen often. So again, nothing out of the ordinary at this point. Now, the last point that we'll cover right now is that she was last seen on Pointers Road at 9:32 p.m. Now, that sighting, and bear in mind there were various other sightings on CCTV at this point, was actually by a marked police car that had seen her in very clear HD footage, had seen her talking to another person. But that is the last time anyone had actually seen Sarah alive.
So the next day, March the 4th, 2021, Sarah Everard is reported missing to the police. This comes after a chain of events which includes no one being able to get into contact with her. Sarah actually had a work appointment. She was very, very punctual. She didn't turn up to that appointment, nor did she turn up to the date that she had arranged with her boyfriend. And after her boyfriend had been calling her earlier on in the day, all of a sudden, instead of ringing out, his calls started going dead, meaning that one of two things had happened. Either Sarah's phone had run out of battery, or Sarah's phone had been manually turned off. Sarah's boyfriend Josh also noted that he didn't receive his usual "I'm home safe" text from her. Some couples do this, some couples don't do it, but I can tell you, if you do it, you do it religiously. I know full well that most couples that do text each other to let each other know when they get home or when they're there somewhere they've gone to, the ones that do it, trust me from personal experience, do it religiously. So major red flag when he doesn't receive that. And then at around 8:10 p.m, so we're getting towards the evening of the following night, after being unable to reach her, Josh finally decides to report his concern for his girlfriend, and by around 8:30 p.m, Sarah Everard is officially reported missing.
So getting this information from Josh, the police immediately spring into action. And although this case is littered with police incompetence, I have to say the detectives that were actually on the case moved pretty quickly. And the reason why they do that is because, quite frankly, there was a lot of public pressure. The moment in which Sarah is missing and that is released to the public, there is a massive groundswell movement from her friends and family, but also just generally from people within London and also really around the world. This was trending actually on Twitter. Her name was trending on Twitter as well. And so there was a lot of attention and a lot of awareness of this case. So much so that there actually was a lot of people that came forward and provided both CCTV evidence, but also sort of like dash cam evidence straight away in this case.
And I think that the volume or the temperature of the room often affects cases like this at the time that they happen. So if, for example, you know, cases we've covered in the past, let's say, for example, the Holly and Jessica case with Ian Huntley, if something similar to that had happened directly after that, the pressure would be intensified straight away. And not that something similar to this had happened, but I feel like I can only ever gauge the feeling from the members of the public and the family and friends and communities that I hang around in and that I'm in and out of, right? And around this time, there was a lot of resentment, you know? People lost out on livings. I'm speaking from my personal, you know, I was a personal trainer that completely went down the pan because of restrictions and regulations that most people thought were not just a tad over the top. And again, I'm speaking for myself, not just a tad over the top. Most people thought were completely and utterly ridiculous. Now, luckily, there were a lot of people that were able to find other avenues. And I would say that we've never seen so many people change their workforces and their jobs and stuff like that in such a short amount of time. But the lockdown in the UK very much forced that. But one thing it forced more than anything was a real feeling of resentment towards authority. So whether that was police, whether that was government, whether that was societal issues, there was a lot of resentment in the air around that time. And I think that might have been what fueled the public to go, you go and find who has done this and you go and find this girl.
Yeah, and that's what they did. I mean, look, the ferocity was felt very quickly, and we'll discuss later on after the case as well. And in a very significant way.
And we'll get to it. But in terms of turnaround times, compared to other cases that we've covered on this channel, the police did a terrific job in the turnaround time of finding out, you know, what had happened.
This is the thing, like there's a real dichotomy here in terms of a police officer very much overstepping what they should have done, abusing their power. But there also is an investigation that happened, as Joey says, in expedited time. So what they did is they started recreating Sarah's last movements, and that was really from trying to identify her leaving her friend's house, which they knew she had done because obviously the friend had let the police know that she'd left and at what time she had left. And so you get Ring doorbell cameras, you get, you know, all of that footage straight away as well. And then obviously Josh has given them as much information as he possibly can. He said, I spoke to her at this point, you know, she had said she'd left the house at this point. And so basically what they could do is sort of start to triangulate where they thought she was at that time. They used cell phone records and that sort of thing to identify those steps. And then they tried to find CCTV off the back of that. They actually had to trawl through 1,800 hours of video footage from cameras in and around that area, which must have been, quite frankly, quite a difficult task and must have involved a lot of people. Like, can you imagine going through that amount of footage? But what that search had enabled them to do is actually paint quite a significant picture of her movements and her whereabouts at the time. What they knew for sure is that she hadn't gone home, because there was footage around that area and she wasn't seen going towards her apartment or anywhere near the apartment. So they knew that she hadn't got home. But the biggest breakthrough really came from when a witness actually showed and provided dashcam footage, and it actually showed Sarah standing with a man on the side of the road. Now, we'll show some of this footage on screen right now, but immediately it looks a bit weird. There's a white car, unmarked. Doesn't seem like there's any police markings on it at all. There's no lights, do you know what I mean? Like some of those undercover cars, like if you look properly, you can kind of see there's a light here, there's a siren here. Do you know what I mean? Like you can kind of suss that they're not quite right. Often they have antennas on them. Did you know this?
There used to be, I can't remember what it was now. People that everyone would tell me I'm talking shit in the comments. There used to actually be, was it PI or P1?
AMPR cameras.
No. Like 99% of unmarked cars used to have 2 of the same digits in the number plate.
Oh, really? You could tell the number plate. Really? Because
I'm talking 20 odd years ago.
Yeah. They're very different now. Like, but as I said, the key thing that gives them away now, a lot of them have antennas so that like they can do the radio communication.
But you know what the other thing as well is?
Yeah.
Like, like unmarked cars.
Yeah.
I'm not being funny, yeah. Like, listen, we drive through Roehampton, right? On the way back from the studio, so we see 1 or 2 unmarked cars per trip to the studio.
Yeah. I saw one today.
You saw one today.
Yeah. With the sirens on.
I've seen one today with sirens on. Yeah, they're always banging, aren't they? They're always nice cars.
Really? Do you think so? This was like a Ford Estate car. I wouldn't have said that was a
what?
The car that I saw today. Oh, really? Silver Ford Estate.
Okay.
You were thinking a Lambo.
The ones I see are nice black, like tinted.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, and maybe not tinted. I don't know if that's allowed, but
I thought you were taking the piss with that.
No. I think they always look like quite nice cars, whereas this one didn't look. This car was sitting at the side of the road. It just didn't look like your typical unmarked police car.
I mean, to be fair, it was a
police car to be a white car.
But it was a Vauxhall Astra. I've seen police cars be that sort of thing. But yeah, it wasn't. Something looked a bit dodgy. Anyway.
Okay, so hold on. Can I just ask you?
Go on.
You drive past that scene. You see that girl. You see the male figure.
Yeah.
You see the 2 cars parked. You see the car parked up on the side there.
Yeah.
The girl's on foot. What are you thinking? Are you thinking couple has had a relationship? They're in a relationship. They've had a Barney. She's got out and threatened to walk the rest of the way. Are you thinking something sinister's going on? Because I'm thinking that there's probably about 10 conclusions that I would come to before I go, that is an unmarked police car
stopping a lady,
off-duty officer stopping a lady.
Yeah, but also, speaking from experience, having lived in London now pretty much for 10 years, I go through people being stopped by unmarked cars all the time. I've probably seen a lot more suspicious looking scenes that are incredibly normal and innocuous. I'm going to be honest, looking at the footage, I probably would have driven past, cycled past, walked past and not even thought of it. Would you?
No, I wouldn't have. No, I would. No, I'm disagreeing with you there. I would have thought that was weird.
Would you have done anything?
Very, very easy to say that in hindsight.
That's the thing. I don't think anyone would even give it a second thought.
The real answer to that question is no.
Yeah.
Although I know for a fact I would have slowed down. And had a look.
I
would have had a look. I would have whatever. Because of the sort of
the situation,
kind-hearted, natured manner of Sarah, right? With how she is described to conduct herself and stuff like that, it wouldn't have looked like an argument was going on. She would have been complying. She'd have been doing everything she would ask for her, whatever. So it would have looked under control. So the answer is no, I probably wouldn't have done anything.
Exactly. And to be fair, I think when police are involved, more often than not, especially from what I've seen, you might disagree, but a lot of people don't want to get involved. Do you see what I mean? Like if the police are conducting an action, a stop, whatever, I think a lot of people sort of try and avoid that situation, let them get on with their jobs.
No, another problem with and you can go one of two ways, because you've got you know, 50% of the people who do it for reaction, for internet and clicks and stuff like that and whatever, they go out, they wind up the police, stuff like that, really annoys me, right? But that's one side of it. There's the other side of people who are naive to what the police are actually able and not able to do, right? The problem is, it's reported that that night Sarah was stopped by this off-duty police officer, and the reason being was that she was breaking lockdown restrictions.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, right, if you stop someone and you say, I've got suspicion to believe you have just assaulted someone, right, whatever, you can flat out no, I haven't. Show me the evidence, right? Show me the evidence. Show me, get the witness, get the statement, show me the evidence, or you've just broke into this car, show me the evidence, whatever. The problem is, right, when you're dealing with fucking pathetic laws that should not be in place, how can Sarah Everard stand there and argue it when you're dealing with a non-crime? You're dealing with a non-crime because his thing was, she was breaking her social bubble.
Yeah.
She had been round and she had seen some friends that weren't in her social bubble.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. And also, the thing that I can't believe about this is there were people walking on that street just around Sarah. So, you know, Sarah was unfortunate person to be stopped by this geezer, but there were loads of people flaunting the regulations. There were loads of people all around her. So again, it's just an injustice from that perspective. I'm going to give you the counterpoint of why I think she would have stopped and been compliant, is because she had a job that she cared about. She didn't want to break any law. She didn't want to put her own livelihood in risk. A lot of people were very worried about it. And I have to say...
Why would you say others wouldn't have stopped and been compliant?
I think there were people in this time that weren't during the lockdown. I think there were people that were flaunting the rules. I mean, we saw parties, we saw raves, didn't we? Do you know what I mean? There were lots of people doing lots of stuff.
Some of us did more than saw them.
There you go. Speaking from experience.
Some of us may have attended as some.
Yeah, exactly.
One or two.
But I think there is context here to say a lot of people during this time, because this was an unprecedented time and because we didn't really know, we'd never been through anything like this previously, a lot of people did just shut up and get on with it. There were people complaining, but I think a lot of people got on with it.
What makes me so sad about this situation is, right, and I always try and make sure that I justify this when I use this word. I don't mean the word naive in a derogatory term. You know, sometimes the most innocent and purest things in life are naive, right? So you've got a naive girl. You've got rules that are being passed and changed by the day. Rules that realistically, no matter what side of the fence you sit on, me and you both know are absolutely fucking ridiculous.
A lot of people would look back on that time and just go, what were we doing?
What were we doing, right? Okay, you've got a police force who all of a sudden feel like
empowered.
It's very much empowering because things they couldn't do before, they can now do. So you had never heard of the dispersal order, right? You'd never heard of it because you weren't a little chav hanging around outside McDonald's. I was. So I knew about the ASBO and the dispersal order and whatever. Antisocial behaviour order, it means that a certain amount of you can't be in a group or whatever. You had never heard of that,
no.
Right? So I've dealt with stuff like that before. Realistically, for me around that time, if a policeman had just tried to talk to me, I wouldn't have been rude to him. I just wouldn't have looked. Just carried on walking, whatever. That's fine. If you've got something that you've got on me, you want to come and arrest me for something, please come and do it. But that's it.
This is
I can completely
there's
understand
context. There's
why for at the time a 27-year-old bloke, which is what I would have been, you know, at the time of this incident, or a 33-year-old woman who is on her own at London in night, clearly feels a little bit vulnerable. Otherwise, she wouldn't have had the phone call with her boyfriend and whatnot. Yeah. So,
and also this guy physically domineering, quite a serious geezer. Like he, on the footage that we've seen, he could have overpowered her easy. But Sarah is 5'4", but small girl.
At the same time as that, you say physically domineering, you say could have overpowered her, but at the same time, most importantly, he's in a position of trust.
Yeah.
He's in a position of trust. It's why people feel a certain way about Lucy Letby, whether or not, you know, more comes to light and she is or isn't innocent. Why people feel a certain way about Wayne Couzens, because we feel a horrible way about people that are in positions of power
And abuse it.
and abuse that. But let's speak about how he did and how they traced it back to Wayne Couzens.
But before we get into that, I just want to tell you, Joey, about a mega deal that I have had access to, which allows you to watch content anywhere in the world. Yes, it's definitely time to have a holiday. Joey's just come back from one. And if you are going on holiday, there is one thing that you need to get and need to download, hitting the link in the description below, is new channel sponsor, Surfshark.
Are these the VPN guys?
They are the VPN guys. The VPN is called a virtual private network. And what it allows you to do is access content that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, but also to access it safely. Now, as Joey has just been on holiday to Spain, the one thing that he's wanted to catch up on more than anything is obviously Love Island.
Boxing.
Because you want to be on it.
Love Island.
Yeah.
No, okay.
Because you want to be on it, you have to research, what you need to do. Or if you're a Chelsea fan like we are, you could be watching the Club World Cup on DAZN back home. Now, if you want to do that, the key thing to do, you want to change your location, that is done via a VPN, and that is done via Surfshark. So if you do want to get access to it with a huge discount on us, we're talking about 4 months for free. Make sure you hit the link in the description, hit the code Joey and Josh. That will get you access to 4 months for free. But let me tell you a little bit more about Surfshark. Basically, I've downloaded a Chrome extension. You hit a click of a button and it will take you directly back to the UK. And if you're on your phone, again, what we've done very easily, you just download an app. It is a click of a button. But it's not just about that. It's also about keeping safe. Say you're out on, in an airport lounge and you want to be able to access your bank details very quickly. Public Wi-Fi, super easy to get your bank details, super easy to hack into your account, super easy to expose your cache. You don't want to do that. And a VPN with Surfshark enables you to encrypt your data, and it means that those pesky hackers cannot get access to it. So remember, if you want to surf the internet safely, hit the link in the description, use code Joey and Josh. That will take you straight to Surfshark and get you access to that deal, 4 months for free on us. And remember, there's a 30-day money back guarantee, so you can use it, and if you don't like it, you can get your money back. Now, let's get back into the episode. The last point of CCTV footage showed that Sarah was handcuffed. She was placed in the back of the car by this person, and it ended up being a hire car. They identified that from CCTV that showed the license plate, and this hire car was hired over 70 miles away in Dover. But Joey, why don't you let me know how they traced Wayne Couzens from that license plate?
Yeah, so the hire car is actually hired out from Dover itself, and that is where Wayne Couzens lives. He actually does a 2.5 hour commute every single day, and that's not, that's 2.5 hours there and then 2.5 hours back as well every single day to go to work, because he actually works in the Borough of London, right? And Wayne Couzens, the man who has hired this hire car, may well be one of the stupidest men that I have ever laid eyes on. Usually, right, we always do our research. There were so many cases when we first started, we just knew them like the back of our hands. We were able to do it. And then as it goes on, we always start to do our research, and you start to think, okay, so what precautions did the killer take to make sure that he wasn't found, for example? There was so many different precautions that were being taken by a man named Danilo Restivo, who was the famous haircut killer that we covered. Even Ian Huntley with the Holly and Jessica thing, there were precautions taken by him trying to lead people astray, stuff like that. This man, Wayne Couzens, has used a rental car to arrest someone when he is off shift, right? And again, we don't know those sort of final moments. We don't know those final conversations that happen between Wayne and Sarah. We don't know whether he arrested her and read out her rights and said on suspicion of a code violation, or whether he just said, get in that car now, right? You would imagine it was the prior. You would imagine he manipulated her. But at the same time, not the sharpest tool in the box.
No, talk about a criminal that you think if he was a police officer, he would know how these things work. He's literally led them to a hire car place. Bearing in mind, London is one of the most surveilled cities in the entire world. And we're talking about cameras that can see, license plates, and ANPR cameras track you wherever you go, right? And so it was easy to find this guy. They literally led them, the police, directly to this hire car place, and they find exactly what his name is because he didn't use a pseudonym, he used his own name. And also there's CCTV footage of him taking the car, didn't have a cap on, didn't have glasses on, just himself.
And I'll tell you who are quite good at tracking down criminals. Police officers.
Yeah.
So for a police officer, let's call it for what it is. The fella's thick as shit.
Thick as shit.
I've done a little bit of research on the background of Wayne Couzens. He was born in Dover, in Kent, so never left the place that he was born, 1972. And he was said by a friend in an interview I saw that he always had an obsession with violence, a fascination with anything violent, especially, and to the point where he would watch a lot of action films after school, but he would turn a 100-minute film, 90-minute film or something into a 5-minute film because he would just watch the fight scenes and then he'd rewind it and then he'd watch it again, then he'd rewind it, then he'd watch it again. And do you know what? Again, hindsight makes it more concerning. Had it not been for hindsight, not so much concerning. But not only that, he is noted to, during his sort of adolescence, during his early years, show a lot of resentment towards women. After leaving school, he actually joins the family trade, which is a mechanic. He come from a family of mechanics. They've actually got a family garage. So really, if he wanted to, being that it was a trade that his family could teach him, they've got a family-run business set up for life with a job that you're never going to go out of work with. Wayne wanted a job, or should I say more specifically, a role in the community that gave him a bit more power, a bit more of an opportunity where he could really impose himself upon people and take the law into his own hands. And in 2002, he starts to apply to become a police officer. He actually fails his first 3 applications to become a police officer, but he passes on his 4th attempt over 4 years later. And it's actually quite hard, right, during this time of his life, sort of late teenage years, early 20s, to find out much about Wayne. But there was a neighbour of Wayne's at the time that did an interview in the aftermath of the crime, and he said that I didn't know Wayne Couzens to talk to. I had seen him working on motorcycles out the front of his home. I also served him in a cafe that I used to work at. He brought his children in a couple of times and ordered food. He seemed a very bad-tempered person. Not very polite is what I noticed when I served him. So not a glowing reference there from a neighbour, is it? Like, I kind of feel like, you know, I'm always giving the old, it's a British phenomenon, isn't it? You know, the old...
Yeah, one of those. A polite nod, but don't actually want to say anything. Yeah.
Oh, mate.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, one of those. Yeah.
Key not working. I always do that to everyone in the flats. But yeah, basically, when I do see a neighbour, I see him at the shop sometimes and that, I'll go down to the shop when I do see a neighbour, then I'll go, hello mate, how you doing? How's things? Oh, hello, yeah, you right? How's your boy playing football? Well, nice. You know what I mean? Like, whatever, right? So the fact that he saw this neighbour in a cafe and he served him, and not only was he being bad-tempered, he didn't acknowledge him and stuff like that, it makes you think that, yeah, this is a troubled person, especially being bad-tempered around your children as well.
Definitely. And the thing to remember here, especially because this will be relevant later on, this guy's a family man. This guy has
He's
a
got
wife
2
and
children
kids.
And a wife of over 10 years.
Yeah, and seemingly, from an outward perspective, without knowing the context of this, a very normal life. You know, again, another key factor here is that this guy is not just any old officer. This guy actually qualified to become an armed officer. So what Joey didn't say, and again, it is relevant here, he got to become a police officer in the 4th time of asking. He actually volunteered, you know, his first role. He was a special constable. So he wasn't even, you know, an official, fully fledged police officer at this time. So he had to, you know, get his way into the force. Not only have the police had to deal with loads of cuts and loads of, you know, spending reductions in their period of time, I think this shows that very specifically, because quite frankly, they needed all of the bodies they could get in the police force right now. So he ends up going and working his way up the force and actually gets himself into different roles. He actually worked for basically the Civil Nuclear Constabulary, which is people that look after nuclear power stations. And that is where he gets the gun training and the gun license, because you effectively are armed officers protecting those. And then finally he gets this position to work in London for the Met, which is a huge police force, probably one of the biggest police forces in the world, quite frankly, because you think how massive and broad ranging London actually is. And again, he's able to look after basically what is Parliament and politicians. He looks after the Parliament role, basically works as a security officer for those guys. And again, he has a gun there. So not only are we just talking about a police officer with authority, like a normal police officer would. In the UK, we don't have tasers. We have tasers. We don't have guns. They have, like fucking batons. That's the sort of thing. But this guy actually has a gun on him. That's the way it works. Like, he's able to possess a firearm. So it's a level above.
When he's on duty, obviously, like when he comes off duty, I'm imagining they're locked up somewhere. They're not. So when he obviously abducted Sarah, he couldn't have had a
he didn't have a weapon on him at that time.
Well, he could, as far as we know.
As far as we know, yeah, he could have taken it, and I mean that would have been a huge issue if he'd done that.
And when you speak about these positions that he got to, it can't help but bring my mind back to the background of Wayne, because I gave you a general background, didn't I? I gave you a little bit of a background of what he was like growing up, how people described him, things like that, the fact that he was a family man, that he did have a wife, he did have kids. But what I didn't go into were the more disturbing and sinister details of his background and the accusations and allegations that have been leveled at him.
And this is the thing, when you go through these, you back home will be in awe and will not believe that this guy was given a weapon, because they are numerous, aren't they?
Now, it's worth pointing out that obviously many women feel that their memories were triggered when they saw the pictures and the footage of Wayne Couzens on the news after the story broke, and therefore there was an influx of allegations and charges against Wayne, some of which he was, actually found convicted for and found guilty of. Some of which there wasn't enough evidence on. It's not to say that every single allegation that, when there's a man that's done such a heinous crime, there will be members of society that might,
take advantage of.
Not take advantage, but want the book thrown at me even more and stuff like that. So it's very, very hard for us to read through all of these and say, well, he did this in this year and this in this and this in this, when a lot of them are, would you call it backdated convictions? They're from before, but we are going to give the allegations.
But let's be honest, right? Even if 2% of these are not true, this guy had a significant rap sheet, and it points to the fact that there were failings in police officers being able to be looked at in any great detail. And in fact, this case actually brought a lot more checks and balances to recruitment within the police force, because this guy should not have been having a weapon.
So I'm going to give you a quick list of the lot of allegations and accusations that have been made against Wayne Couzens. I want to start off by talking about an incident in 1995, right, where a woman is said to have been raped and kidnapped in almost identical fashion to that of how Sarah was. However, obviously, and very, very luckily, this woman actually survived. Despite reporting it to the police at the time, the perpetrator was never found, but it is on record that it was reported to the police. Over 25 years later, when the case of Sarah Everard's murder hits the headlines and this woman sees a man has been arrested, this woman sits at home and in her head she realizes that is the man all those years ago that did that to me. During his time in the Territorial Army, he had been reported as being very, very aggressive towards women on multiple occasions. Shortly after, another woman came forward and claimed that she had been raped by Couzens either in late 2006 or early 2007. In 2007, Wayne's family learns that he has secretly married a woman and is now in grave financial danger with debts piling up. From 2013 to 2015, there are 3 separate motoring offences, and I'm going to explain to you quickly, Josh, what this motoring offence is, right? It's not speeding, it's not jumping a red light, it's not anything like that, it's not parking somewhere.
I was wondering why you were bringing motoring offences up right now, but yeah, go on, explain it.
Well, I'll tell you why, right? Did you know that it is a motoring offence. If you are a police officer in a marked police car, it's an offence basically to go off grid, to go off radar, basically, to go completely off of your route. So let's say you are a police officer of the borough of Epsom and Ewell. Yeah. We don't want you randomly
going into Surrey
or in Esher.
We
don't want you in Esher. Yeah. And that actually is an offence.
Oh, wow.
Now, if, for example, you were there for 10 minutes, you stopped off at the BP garage, whatever, as they all do, it's not an offence. But if you go missing for 3 hours out of your area during your working time, that's actually an offence, right? That happened to Wayne Couzens 3 times during the period of 2013 to 2015. Where's the first place your mind jumps to?
Come on, tell me.
Well, I mean, to me, mate, knowing what we know now, was he going out looking for women?
Did you say this was in a marked car?
Yeah, that's how they knew it. That's how they knew it.
That is terrifying.
Was he going out looking for women?
Yeah.
Was he going out?
I didn't even know that.
Women? And this is the thing, mate. You know, you go, that's terrifying, and you think, oh, in a marked car, mate. He might as well have done it in a marked car.
Yeah, because he pretended to be an officer.
With how
at
easy,
the time.
How easy it was to trace back the rental.
Yeah.
With how easy he must have known it will be for the walls to close in on him. He must have known this. He might as well have done it in a marked car.
Yeah, true.
Because he was going to get found regardless. In 2015, Wayne Couzens was said to have been involved in an incident of indecent exposure which Kent police failed to ever follow up on. In June 2015, there was also a complaint made to Kent police that an officer was seen driving naked from the waist down. This man was said to have been Wayne Couzens. From this point on, there's honestly so many accusations of Wayne Couzens, it's just ridiculous. Most of which involve indecent exposure, one of which was in a McDonald's drive-through, by the way, just days before the disappearance of Sarah Everard. 2 days.
He actually did it twice. There were 2 incidents of indecent exposure in that same McDonald's. It's just, he went back. This is the thing, the police weren't called until the 2nd time because he'd done it twice. So it's just, like, this guy had a pattern of this sort of behaviour. And again, nothing was ever done. He was never convicted and he was never barred from being a police officer.
It's funny because when you say he has a pattern of that behaviour, the inquest actually heard the judge describe Sarah's murder as the culmination of a trajectory of sexually motivated behaviour and offending, including indecent exposure, the sexual assault on a child, sexual touching and sharing of unsolicited photos of his genitals.
Basically, we're building a psychological profile of a man that has significant sexual problems and issues, and they are against the law. Like, these are not like law-abiding citizens things. This isn't a kink. This isn't something that is fine and accepted within society. This is one of the most egregious failings to be able to profile someone that could do something far worse. And there are plenty of people that are out there that are doing something like this that will never go on to commit murder or kidnap. But what you have to do, especially as someone that is a police officer, you have to start questioning their morality and their abilities to be a police officer when stuff like this is happening.
Yeah, and fellow officers need to be. Like, I'm not being funny. Very rarely do police officers ride alone. Like, I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but I'm saying you do a lot of time riding in that car with your fellow police officer and stuff. Has no one ever heard him make an inappropriate comment? Obviously, it came out in the inquest that he was sending racist, homophobic, and inappropriate images into WhatsApp groups with fellow police officers. I don't know whether they were male police officers, female police officers, and when I say inappropriate, that's inappropriate, not indecent. So inappropriate could just be naked women or something like that. Yeah? Not saying it's inappropriate in life, inappropriate in the workspace. Fair?
Yeah, very much so. Any workspace, let alone police officers' workspace.
Oh, well, I was going to offer to take it off now, but if that's your stance on it, then
I do want to say that.
No, but what I would say is, like, those police officers there must be an element of, I don't want to use the term blood on their hands, but do you know what I mean? They must kick themselves and think like, fuck, man. Like, you know, we thought
But-
this bloke was a little bit cooked and having a little bit of banter.
But it's people accuse these officers, because bear in mind, we're talking about one particular WhatsApp group here. And I think there were 4 total officers within this one. I think what they were concerned about is their own skin and their own careers, because they had been sharing equally as maybe not troublesome images, but definitely language was used in that group. And this came out in the inquest afterwards, which was incredibly traumatic and problematic. And so they didn't want this to come to light because it would expose them as well. But that doesn't forgive this guy and the failings that they had to identify this person. And it wasn't just them, though. There's superiors that haven't identified it. There's people within the force that haven't identified it. And you've got to say it's a complete error on their part for not doing so.
But just quickly, I want 2 seconds to give you the opportunity to officially become a member of the Hardcore. All you need to do is hit the link in the description. That will take you to the section where you can become a member of the Joey and Josh channel. Now, what does that membership get you? Well, firstly, it gets you exclusive access to all of our videos up to 48 hours before they're uploaded to the general public. And as well as that, it gets you a members only exclusive live stream once every single week where we interact with you guys. We discuss the latest episodes. We always let you know what the next planned episode is, which is an absolute exclusive only for our members. And as well as that, we make sure we take your suggestions. So just hit the link in the description if you do want to become a member. Let's get back into it. Just to go back now to the timeline of events. Clapham to Dover, mate. You're looking at over an hour's drive there. You could be looking at over an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Right? I told you my story of when I was arrested in Thailand, and I don't know if you remember this, but one of the main moment when this isn't going to be all right hit home for me was when we drove past the police station, because I knew where the police station was, and I'm in the back of this unmarked police car. We drove past the police station, and I'm like, oh fuck, like whatever, right? For Sarah Everard, what must that journey have been like? Because this is one of the most heartbreaking parts of the case for me. You hold out hope, you hold out optimism, and when it's fight or flight, you know, 90% of the victims that we cover choose to actually fight. Yeah. But for Sarah Everard, that 80-mile journey must have just been torture.
Well, this is the thing. If she was arrested under the suspicion of breaking lockdown regulations, there are very clear rules to say that she has to be taken to the nearest police station. We're talking about central London here. Do you know what I mean? In the Clapham, Brixton area, in between
They're
those
all
two.
over the gaff.
Like, there are so many police stations. There's probably 10 police stations in a 5-mile radius. Like, there literally is so many of them, right? So the moment in which she is leaving London, it would have dawned on her. And like Joey said, you can't quite comprehend and almost don't want to comprehend the mental space that she is in at this time. But yes, Wayne Couzens at this point still had Sarah Everard in the back of his car. He drives her all the way to Dover. She's still handcuffed at this point. And as we say, the journey must have been absolutely horrific. Now, again, what we're going to do here is I'm going to try and detail the next steps of what actually happened. And again, let me just provide you some discretion here. I will go into detail, and this is incredibly distressing, right? What actually happened to Sarah. So just bear that in mind. So what happened is that Wayne moved Sarah from the hire car into his own Seat vehicle, right? So there was a transfer from one vehicle to the other. And basically from this point on, police actually were able to identify cell phone records and knew where Wayne Couzens was, and they did this after the fact. Basically, he went to the Shepherdswell area, which is sort of like northwest of Dover. It is believed at this time that Sarah was actually raped by Wayne Couzens, and they've got evidence and sort of like records to be able to identify that had happened. So again, this is an awful moment in the case. And again, when I heard about this, it was just truly traumatic. Then in the early hours of March the 4th, bear in mind she went missing on March the 3rd, that is then where Wayne killed Sarah Everard. The worst part of this for me, Joey, obviously any murder of any kind on poor innocent Sarah Everard was disgusting. But the fact is, the way that Wayne actually killed her was using the belt, the police belt that he actually wore on duty. And again, horrifically, this would have taken 2 minutes, a coroner said afterwards, to actually kill her. So this was an awful death. And again, the parents and her friends and family had to sort of hear the traumatic element and the way that she actually passed away. And again, in the impact statements afterwards, we hear about how this had haunted them, about how this moment had, you know, affected their sleep and affected that, you know, their dreams and that sort of thing. So again, thoughts and condolences go out to the friends and family, because fuck me, to hear this must have been truly, truly traumatic.
And whereabouts did he actually carry the crime itself out in terms of the killing of Sarah?
It's understood to be in a sort of like a secluded, wooded area, but again, it's in the area that I sort of said they can't quite pin down where it was, because what's clear is that he moved her after the fact.
He actually owned land in that area, didn't he?
He did, and this is where the story gets really, really concerning, because I think what people might say is that there was an element of this being a crime of passion, a crime in the heat of the moment, and someone that had just, you know, stumbled across someone and wanted to do something, right?
And what would give weight to that argument is the fact that there literally is no planning behind this. Like, I know we're going to get to it, and he tried to dispose of the body and whatnot, but apart from that, there's no planning behind this.
Unfortunately to say, Joey, there's an incredible amount of planning that went into this murder. And this case was being, I suppose, ideated upon by Wayne Couzens for multiple years.
See, this is where I find it really hard, right? Because I want to speak about, I don't want to show any respect in the world to this cunt, but I want to speak about the case as a whole without getting rolled up and whatnot. Mate, we've been covering true crime cases for a long time now, and some of the planning, some of the technicalities, some of the freak chances of how people have been caught are so like, oh my God, if that domino never fell, then we would know whatever. There would have been 1,000,001 ways to catch this man. And that's why I say there was fuck all planning. Because maybe what I should have said was there was fuck all efficient planning from a serial killer standpoint or from a killer's standpoint.
Yep.
Because the planning that was carried out from Wayne Couzens was pathetic, basically.
Absolutely pathetic. Now, basically, Wayne Couzens drives to Hodes Wood, which is an area near Ashford in Kent, where Wayne, as Joey said, owned a plot of land. Now, he didn't buy this plot of land a month, 2 months prior. He bought this plot of land in 2019. Bear in mind, Sarah went missing on the 3rd of March, 2021. So he paid £5,000 in cash for a wooded area, which sounds, you know, like it could be a holiday destination. In fact, he took his kids and his family there for day trips, right? So that's what you're picturing in your mind. But this wooded area was known as a fly tipping area. It was known as a very bad part of Kent, really. Yeah. Like it wasn't an idyllic,
you're not buying a bit in
scene.
A nature reserve.
No. And again, this formed a very strong part of the case to show that Wayne had paid £5,000 in cash. He had identified this area as being an area in which he could be secluded, where there wasn't a lot of activity going on, where he could have peace and quiet. But again, it was shown to be an area in which he had planned to take someone and dispose of them there. And that's exactly what this little sick bastard did with Sarah. So basically, what he ended up doing on the night of March the 4th is leaving her in this wooded area in Hodes Wood, right?
Is she buried?
As far as I'm aware, she is hidden somewhere in this area. She's She's definitely not buried. No. Now, again, what is super weird about this is Wayne then drives to a service station, gets caught on CCTV at about 4 a.m. in the morning, buys a drink, buys a hot chocolate, goes about his life as if nothing had happened when Sarah is lying in this wood, you know, passed away at this point. And very importantly for his own cover story, Wayne had said to his family that he was working a night shift. He gets back home, sees his family at 8:20 odd in the morning. And again, this was a very normal occurrence for them to have seen, him returning at this time. It didn't raise any suspicions. Do you know what I mean? But perhaps it should have done.
So this man goes back to his family home. I'm guessing he embraces his wife, tells her about his day at work, stuff like that. Probably plays with his children, and all of them are untoward as to not only what he's done, but who this man actually is.
Yeah, like literally, this is the sixth part of it. And it shows his psychopathy that he maintains a relatively normal life after this murder, which I cannot believe. And also, right, the next part of the story is crazy in itself. He's just come back from a night shift. What's the first thing you do after a night shift?
I'd have a wash, probably.
Have a wash. You'd probably go to sleep because you're tired, you're knackered. No, at 9:21, he leaves the house again, leaves his family. He drives to Sandwich in Kent, which again is a decent drive, probably 20, 30 miles to Sandwich in Kent. And he takes Sarah's phone and he throws it in a river, removes the SIM card as well, and disposes of that as well. So again, he's thinking he's covering his tracks. Right. He thinks he's being a criminal mastermind in this position. And I think what's clear is that he absolutely wasn't. On the next day, on March the 5th, Wayne went to a B&Q and he bought a petrol can. And he bought large rubble builder's bags as well. And again, he's caught both within that shop, but also then at a petrol station where he's filling up this petrol can. He then drives to Hode's Wood. He places Sarah, this is disgusting, inside of a old fridge that, again, as I say, was a fly tipping area that was there. And he sets fire to the fridge with Sarah's remains in there as well. And then once he had burnt the body, which a lot of people, again, had seen, by the way, and they actually mentioned this to the police that there was a fire in the area, called it in. He then basically moves her with the builder's bags that he purchased into a pond. So he basically puts her underwater in this pond.
As well as the things we're talking about, he's also carrying out daily routine stuff as well, isn't he? Going, doing shopping, things like that. He even makes a call to his local vet about his dog, and he wants to have his dog checked in to the vet because he thinks his dog has separation anxiety issues. And when I heard this call, I just thought, mate, these killers, they're just weird as fuck, aren't they? Like, they really, really are weird. You know what I mean? How can you have no compassion for human life, but such compassion for animal life? Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying you should or shouldn't like one or the other, but I'm saying, like, how can there be that sort of non-correlation there in your compassion? But you actually told me something that was a little bit more interesting about why that call could have been made, didn't you?
Well, this is the thing. A lot of people use this point and will show some footage of the actual vet call but it's just weird in the way he's even sort of like talking, to be honest. Completely normal.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could book my dog in for the vet so I can have a discussion about issues. It's Couzens, Couzens. We think she's suffering from like separation anxiety.
But yeah, the thing that has been alluded to, or people have, I suppose, questioned about this is, was he trying to, again, use this as another cover for his cover story? Now, what he said on that call is, the dog jumps up, it's hurting my family, my kids. It's hurt myself as well when it scratched us, because that's what dogs do. They jump up and they, if they've got long claws, they can scratch you. Now, obviously, if it came down to it, Couzens could have used this call in his dealings with the police to say, this is why I've got scratches on me, because we know what's clear is that in moments when it's a life and death situation, you can cause a lot of harm. Even if you're being restrained, you can still cause a lot of harm. So there may very well have been marks, injuries on Wayne Couzens.
Tell you what would have probably helped that dog's anxiety. A good old dog walk. And if you're going to go for a dog walk, you probably want nice area, lots of space, somewhere that you're able to, let the dog off the lead. and run around. And if you're going to do so, why not make a day of it and take the family?
With this case, it just gets worse and worse and worse.
This is exactly what I was thinking, yeah.
Like,
so when we originally we were talking about that 80-mile drive,
yeah,
and I'm thinking that must have been the worst thing ever. And it is. I'm not diminishing anything. But this man, for context, has killed a woman. He has taken her body, burnt it, dumped it, and then he took his family a matter of days to the site in which he committed that crime. He took his family for a walk a day out to that site. It's
just sick, isn't it? Like, to be honest with you, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But I think what this guy hadn't identified was that the police were very, very much onto him at this point. Like, obviously, the last point in the story is March 7th. That's where he takes his family to the pond. But there was a lot of evidence being collected by CCTV. They'd placed him all the way back, and they'd actually been able to find a lot of information. Now, it was on March the 9th, 2021, that Wayne Couzens actually got a knock on his door from police. Now, at this time, they actually arrest him straight away on suspicion of kidnap. They've seen the evidence from the bus. They've seen the footage from the police. They've seen lots of different CCTV of him at the hire car place, around Hodeswood. Basically, he's banged to rights.
Yeah, he's absolutely banged to rights. And this is what unfolds. So obviously, he initially starts off denying it. He denies knowing Sarah. He says, how would I know? All I've done is I've seen her on the news. You must have something on me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be handcuffed here. And then eventually he folds. He gives in. He cracks like an egg, and not one that, not one that needed much doing.
What do you think it was in the moment in him being interviewed that the dawn of realization came upon him when he was like, I am fucked?
Well, he understands. We don't know whether he could do all these years being a police officer and never have interrogated anyone, right? So we don't know in what sort of
capacity he worked.
He's working in, right? He might have not have been interrogated before. He might not have been in interrogation, but the chances are you'd imagine he understands what's going on there. Now, at first, one of the first things that gets said to him when he says, like, how do you know? You must know something for me to whatever. They don't say that's information that we can't share. We can't share it. They say,
go on, tell me.
They say that's evidence.
Yeah.
They say that's evidence.
Okay, so you think it might have been that
straight
language.
away, I think he realizes, oh, fuck, evidence, like whatever.
Yeah.
And then when they don't even need to get firm with him, because let's be honest, like, look, any man that ever tries to pick on women and do stuff like this is an absolute pussy anyway. But he sits there like quivering little.
Fuck me. He knows
pussy.
He knows he's been rattled, by the way, doesn't he? Even just the body language. Like, first of all, breathing really heavily, constantly trying to think about what he's trying to say. He does a lot of ums and ahs. Basically, I have a feeling that he's trying to work on the story, even at the first part of the interview. Now, let's talk about the story, Joe. Because this is just fucking,
the story,
this is a joke.
Just answer me this, right? On a scale of 1 to completely fucking mental, where are you putting
I'm going,
story?
this is completely mental. Do you think the detectives actually, like, immediately know this is bullshit?
See, this is why you would be good at this job, and I would be bad.
Go on.
Because I can imagine someone sitting and saying this stuff to you, and you going, okay, and they've got so they contact you, but you don't have their number,
and they don't have your number,
and they don't have your number, but they.
And they're following you.
They're following you, but they don't know what you look like. You don't know what they look like. And you can't tell me where they are, but there's a roundabout. Oh, okay, cool, right, okay. I can imagine you actually sitting and doing that.
Writing it.
And having the patience and writing it, whereas I would just sit there and go, oi, cut the shit, cunt. Fucking let us know what you've done. Do you know what I mean?
And that's why you wouldn't make a good detective.
That's why I don't make good at much in life. But do you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. Yeah. I just thought it's completely laughable. He says basically that he's run up a bill from bumping brasses, basically, hasn't he?
Yep.
In terms of he's not been paying his escort, his female workers. He's run up a debt, and they've told him that he needs to get someone. So. Yeah.
But immediately, like, we're talking about the space of like 5 minutes, he changes his story. Like, if that's not the biggest red flag of someone's like competence to be able to say exactly what's happened.
And you met him in this roundabout, sort of by Dover, Maidstone, Kent, whatever.
Kent,
So why didn't he take her from London?
this doesn't make any sense, does it?
No.
But also the fact of this is it's like completely nonsensical. There's no evidence of anyone following him. There's no evidence that he's actually come into contact with a call girl at all. It's just complete bollocks, isn't it? It's just complete bollocks. Now, mate, I think the interview speaks for itself. I think it's quite clear that he's obviously lying, and I think police didn't really pay a lot of attention to it. In fact, they were building a case against him. Do you know the thing that I couldn't believe about this, Joey, is that 45 minutes before the police knocked on his door, he did a full factory reset of his phone. Now, is that a coincidence?
As you do.
Is that a coincidence, or is that someone had been tipping him off?
It would have to be a big coincidence, seeing that every case we cover, there's usually something very similar that happens just before the police knock on the suspect's door.
What's that?
Well, John Venables hammering at a hard drive comes to mind.
Oh, yeah, shit. John Venables was the one on the hard drive. Yeah.
John Venables
Yeah,
was like
fucking knew
hammering
he was
away at a hard
rumbled.
drive.
And they
when the
caught
police-
him in the act.
When the police turned
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
So what I'm saying is
Shit.
this is something that, you know, albeit in a different case and in a different capacity, we've come across this before.
Yeah. So the police obviously started doing their digging, and the evidence against Wayne was clear and obvious, and that his story was absolute bullshit. The police were looking at his phone records. They were tracing his movements. They find that he was often visiting Hodeswood in very suspicious times of the day and night. So they go straight there. And on March the 10th, 2021, 7 days after Sarah went missing, they actually start searching that area. By 4:20 p.m. that day, human remains, that from Sarah, were discovered. 2 days later, Sarah was formally identified, and they had to do so because of how badly she was decomposed. They had to do so via dental records. So what that meant is that the police had enough evidence to be able to charge Wayne Couzens with murder. And on March the 10th, he was actually rearrested, not on suspicion of kidnap, but on suspicion of murder. He actually appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court on March the 13th and therefore was remanded in custody awaiting a trial. But the key thing is that it never went to trial. And on the 8th of June 2021, Couzens pled guilty to the kidnap and rape of Sarah Everard, and he also admitted responsibility for her killing, but he did not formally enter a plea for the murder charge pending medical records. But on July the 9th, 2021, Couzens actually finally pled guilty to Sarah's murder during a hearing at Belmarsh Prison via a video link to the Old Bailey. And during this appearance, this guy was as his normal self, shaking with his head down, filled, I'm sure, with guilt. And this is where we now get to the sentencing, because in the UK, for murder, you can get life imprisonment. But in the UK, as you know, Joey, you can't actually get that full life term, often for individual murders. It's usually for serial killers and for people with very egregious circumstances, wasn't it? So what a lot of people were worried about in this case is that he wouldn't actually get a full life term and that he would basically be able to get out of prison. But the judge actually identified this case as being so significant, and because of all of the context around this, again, you've got to remember there was an outcry, there were protests, there were vigils that were being sort of barricaded by police. This was actually deemed to be a terrorist case. This was deemed to be so important that it actually led to what the judge deemed to be a rightful full life term. And so Wayne Couzens was actually given the full life sentence, and therefore he will never be able to be released from prison.
So before he actually made it into the dock, Wayne was in his prison cell. He was taken to hospital with a head injury where he had assumably run and, you know, headbutted the wall, treated for minor injuries, brought back to his prison cell, did the same again, treated for minor injuries again, did the same again. Now, I always take a very, very keen interest, not that I'm hoping that there are any, Josh, at all, when it comes to prison attacks of some of the inmates we cover. Unfortunately, we're yet to know anything about one that has happened to Wayne Couzens. There was a rumour, wasn't there, that Charles Bronson had barricaded him in his cell, but I think that was somewhat debunked. So we haven't heard all that much just yet, but we have heard that Wayne has obviously tried to I do actually genuinely, in my opinion, try to take his own life in his cell, because, you know, if you're trying to knock yourself unconscious in your cell, you're doing so with the hope that you'll bleed out.
I'm very surprised that we haven't heard more about a police officer in prison being harmed more than he has. Like you've often told me about other criminals or other types of criminals being immediately targeted by serious people in prison. So I'm very surprised that this guy, bearing in mind the crime that he committed, I'm surprised he hasn't had more of a difficult time in prison.
The likelihood is he'll be on non-swing, even if he's not done something to children. They just put him there sometimes because do you know what the word nonce comes from?
God, no, I don't.
Do you not know this?
No, I don't. Is it a prison acronym?
Prison term, yeah.
Was it
on normal
custodial?
Not on normal something exercise. Not on normal.
Okay, custodial exercise or probably something like that.
Yeah,
within custody.
Curriculum exercise.
Okay, fine. I didn't know it was an abbreviation. There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's an abbreviation of a word. Yeah.
And speaking of his additional crimes, by the way, he was actually also then subsequently charged for some of the indecent exposure that you talked about earlier on.
And what the point I was trying to make is, if you are on one of those wings, I'm not saying you can't be gotten at, but it's harder. It's harder for other inmates to get you, and you can get a little bit of an easier ride. So I'm sure we'll hear more about Wayne Couzens' time in prison as it goes on.
I'm sure we will. And it wasn't just that in terms of the aftermath. There was obviously a significant amount of outcry by the public, and therefore there was a public inquiry. That was called the Angelini inquiry, and that was headed up by Lady Eilish Angelini as well. And she was there to investigate how Wayne Couzens was able to serve as a police officer. Obviously, what we've said, all of the evidence that we've gone through in terms of his inability and his sort of impropriety to actually become a police officer, and the fact that he managed to go up and raise up into the Met Police, she actually was there to identify what had actually happened and the failings in the vetting process. And because of that, there has been changes in the recruitment and vetting process of police officers, which again, is a very important sort of, I suppose, act to actually go through. And thank God that the inquiry has actually happened, and hopefully there is systemic change. The last thing I'll say, Joey, on this in terms of like the impact on, I suppose, women and broader culture, is that a YouGov poll was conducted after this, and they said that 47% of women lost trust in the police. Probably one of the most scary parts of this is that not just after that inquiry, but there was also like general advice that was then given by the Met Police. Because basically what people were saying is, if I get accosted by a plainclothes police officer and this has happened, what should I do? And have you heard the advice that the Met Police gave to people in this situation?
Didn't they ask or advise women to call 999 at that time?
They said, call 999, shout out to a member of public, or try and run towards a bus.
So panic, basically.
And I'm sure the police officers wouldn't want that, even if they were conducting a normal arrest. Like, it doesn't make sense from a police custody perspective. It doesn't make sense from someone being arrested perspective. Like, again, it just shows like there's no clear evidence or no clear advice to people just trying to go about their daily lives in a moment in which we were being locked down and not allowed to leave our homes. So
I think one of the reasons why this case really hit home with the British public and was one that just baffled people and had such a negative impact on the nation is the fact that, much like when we recently covered the Jamie Bolger case with sort of John Venables and Robert Thompson, we associate children with innocence, and there's certain members of society, there's certain demographics that we associate with certain things, and we associate law enforcement and trust with the police, or a lot of people do. And I think that survey you just showed there shows that a lot of people now don't, and trust may have been won over by some in the meantime since, but there's a lot of those sort of 47%, did you say it was? 47%. Yeah, there's a lot of that 47% that will never have the same sort of trust for the police force.
And it's not just that. There was a vigil that was handed down and people sort of trying to remember Sarah. And the Met Police actually broke this vigil up and were very heavy-handed in their sort of like, basically, they arrested people at this because they were gathering in a public space.
This is one at Clapham Common.
Yeah, this was a joke. So much so that the Met Police had to pay compensation to the people that were arrested and basically manhandled. And again, it was just such an episode of incompetence by the police. So again, it was just truly, truly traumatic. What I will say to sort of round this up is some of the statements in which Sarah's family spoke about Sarah, you know, and how they'd want her to be remembered. They thanked the public for their kindness and support in what I think was definitely the worst period of their entire lives. And I think what we would say between you and I is we very much want to support and protect that family, but also sort of share our, I don't even know how you describe it, to be honest with you. We want to make sure that women are safe and feel able to walk the streets of London and let alone the world, mate, and have to go through their lives with peace and not have to be, you know, harassed by people. Yeah. There's a big issue in the UK where this is going
women
on.
And men.
Yeah, this is the thing. There's a big issue, and I think this case brought light to an issue that needed to be solved. And unfortunately, while there's been a public inquiry, of what research I've done, I can't see too much that has changed. So I think that's a real negative part of this, to be honest.
Well, let's hope that more does change and we do see something come out of it. People, it was requested heavily by you guys. And when the members of the channel start requesting a certain topic or a certain case, it means that we do need to cover it on the channel. So we have done that today. We've tried to do so to the best of our abilities. So please do us a massive favor. If you've made it to the end of the video, smash a like on the video. We're up to 25,000 subscribers.
We've hit 25,000 today. So thank you so much to every single person that has watched the video, liked the video, subscribed to the channel. It means the absolute world. 25,000 in 6 months.
Unbelievable.
Is a huge amount of people. And quite frankly, we didn't ever expect it, did we?
No. And to be honest, we've only been trying for about 3 of them 6 months anyway. Also, that 25,000, sorry to put a downer on things, but when you go to the analytics page and you have a look at the amount of regular viewers, so the ones that pretty much tune in for every video that aren't subscribed, there's like 50% of the viewers that are watching all the videos that aren't subscribed.
Hit the button right now.
One click of a button, really, really easy. Thank you so much. Let us know what you want us to cover in the next video, and we will see you all in the next one.